This is the OnePlus 7 Pro, and it's been one of the best phones I have ever held. And my wife has the Galaxy S10, so I have a little experience with that one at least as well. I mean, first of all, before we continue, look at this. Look how, I mean, every reviewer talks about it, but in person, it's beautiful. I love it, and it just doesn't feel real. Okay, enough with that. That's aesthetics. So I've reshot this video countless times now, trying to get my thoughts and feelings down about the camera on the OnePlus 7 Pro. And I've recorded it so many times because they've all turned into a bit of a rant and a bit too long. And I want to try to condense that down as much as possible, and I may have to break up some of the subjects for future video. Now, why am I talking about the camera specifically? Well, first of all, the phone itself is incredibly fast, incredibly smooth, and one of the best user experiences I've ever seen in a phone. It's simple, it's quick, it's snappy, it's responsive, and for 95% of your uses, I can't say that there might be a better phone out there right now, because 95% of your time is spent scrolling and going through apps, and with a 90 Hz refresh rate and just super fast RAM and storage, it just handles all of it like a dream. Like, I haven't even run into any bugs, like, ever with it. It's just so good. Now, I don't need to get into those because every reviewer has talked about it. I just wanted to get my feelings on that first, right away. And so the remainder 5% of camera usage has been what has deterred some people from buying this phone, because some reviewers said that the camera was subpar, and a lot of people say that they're not going to get it because it has a bad camera. And I want to say right away that the camera in this phone is actually really good. It's not bad. It had a problem in the very beginning for being mildly inconsistent due to a software issue that OnePlus has since fixed. There was an Oxygen OS update that cleared up a lot of the camera issues, and now it functions much more consistently. Now, some of the other issues were people said that the videos were a little oversaturated at times, and that in some shadow, sometimes with photos, the image would get a little bit crunchy. The UI for the camera app itself is a little bit more simplistic, and they tuck some things out of the way that other camera apps kind of bring to the forefront and let you know about, such as HDR mode. That can be tucked away sometimes, and you have to look for it first to make sure that it's on or off, depending on the situation. If HDR mode is on, then if you're holding the camera very still and taking a picture of something that is moving still, or not moving, I should say, then it will do a good job. But if something is moving, then it will distort the picture and give you some of that crunchiness. So making sure that you notice those things will be a big help. So I decided to go on, and I originally filmed the whole review on the phone and had various clips, but I was outside, and I don't know, that's when I was doing the rant, so I just came inside so I could show you the phone and get the whole thing done, and I'll show some of those clips. I tested it in various ways, by taking pictures and by taking video in different types of lighting and in different modes. Now, when shooting automatic, it seemed the AI did a pretty good job of detecting what was there and shot accordingly and did a good job. I actually didn't really run into any problems. There are a few different modes. There is the 48 megapixel where it super samples down to a 12 megapixel image, giving you a little bit more detail. Now, for most instances, if you want the best quality image, shoot in RAW. This does have the ability to shoot in RAW, and it will gather more information that you can then play with the lighting in programs like Snapseed. You could use Lightroom on here, but Snapseed, I think, offers a little bit more for a free program. You can get Lightroom for free, but I think they restrict it a little bit if you don't have the paid for memberships. But Snapseed can edit images in RAW, and then you can play with the highlights and the shadows a lot better in Snapseed. And if you're trying to, do a money shot and do something like really good for Instagram, that's the best way to do it. I'll show some examples here. And the clarity that you can see in the image is astounding. Now, you can do that in automatic mode, or you can take things up a little bit and use manual mode. Now, a lot of things in manual do translate perfectly if you already have a photography background. I am a professional photographer, so I can actually use those. I don't really talk about photography too much, even though that's how I make my money. So, I mean, if you want consistency, always use manual settings. If you're relying on the AI of a phone, that's all well and good, but if it gets confused by something, then yeah. So, but for most cases, it does fine on its own. Now, I tested night mode, and night mode was surprisingly good. Now, I did 3 different things in night mode to test night shots. I tried it first at night mode, which it takes about 1 or 2 seconds to take the shot. Now, I'm guessing it takes a couple shots the way that an HDR image would work. Usually there's like 3 shots where they would do it at a high exposure, a low exposure, and then medium ground exposure, or swapping ISOs. Now, with night mode, I believe that they play around with different ISO levels, and then they have a noise reduction software that helps reduce any noise that may have resulted from it, because it didn't take the exposure for long at all, and the end result was actually pretty good. I wanted to make sure it wasn't just a glorified version of HDR, so I took the shot in HDR, and it wasn't that good. It was a little better than just shooting straight, but it wasn't good. So, last result, I did a 10-second exposure at 100 ISO. Now that's really low. That's lower than some cameras go. The camera I'm shooting on right now can only go down to 200, so 100 is really good. He does that. So at 10 seconds, it took a beautiful image. Now, I did shoot it in RAW, remember that's important, and it really had no noise to speak of. Then in Snapseed, I upped the shadows a little bit and played with the curves, and voila, great image. And it's one of the best images I've seen as far as phones that I've taken. Now, I do believe that the Pixel 3 is still a better camera, but it's not a better experience with everything else. So, if you're willing to play around with the camera a little bit better, then you're gonna get the results that you want. Now, you do have to get used to the user interface, because it is a little bit different than most camera user interfaces. So, if you want some tutorials on how to use this a little bit better, let me know in the comments, and then maybe I can teach you some things about how to edit in Snapseed and how to take better pictures on your phone, because most of this stuff applies to every camera. But as far as it goes, as far as the automatic pictures, which I think is what the whole whining was about anyway, that's been fixed. You don't have to worry about that. It does a good job. Now, as far as portrait photography goes, when it isolates the foreground subject from the background, it did a really good job. I think it does quite well. Make sure that you're holding the camera very still and are at the right distance, because then it won't have as much trouble isolating that image. I've tried doing it with moving objects before at a little bit too much of a distance, and it doesn't come out very good. So make sure you're doing it right. But as far as how well it cuts subjects out, I think it does a bang-up job. Moving on from that, video. Now, as far as oversaturating, I think that there may be some truth to that, but it handles exposure very well. Now, I moved the camera around and took some video in the woods, and depending on whether I was in direct sunlight or not, I always did a good job of adjusting it very quickly to compensate for it and making sure that I was still well exposed. Was the image at times a little oversaturated? Maybe, but I think that was a byproduct of trying to keep the colors right. Now, as far as complaints for oversaturation, now if you're using this footage for anything, whether it be Instagram, YouTube, or whatever, who just uploads straight video without editing it a little bit first? Now, of course, you're going to play with the colors a little bit afterward. Just desaturate it a little bit, or change the color tones to whatever you want. I mean, that's such a little thing to fix. It's not a big deal. And the same with images. I pretty much always play with the colors unless it somehow looks perfect. Now, sometimes with the lighting here, I don't change anything, because sometimes the way the lighting reacts in this room is really good, so I don't have to change it. But for the most part, I always play with the color scopes. So as long as the subject is well exposed and there's good detail and everything's in focus, you can always play with the colors. Not a big deal. So I don't even think it's worthy of complaining about. Sure, the Google Pixel 3 may have better colors straight out of the camera. That is probably true. Keeping you from buying a better phone experience where 95% of the time you're going to be swiping through apps, I just don't think that's true. Now, I feel like the examples that I've added to this video may speak for themselves well enough. Now, I probably will dive into the subject a little bit further, but as far as video goes and for vlogging and taking great pictures, I think it'll do fine. I even experimented a little bit with external apps where you use a camera through the different apps, and I might talk about that a little bit more, but in essence, it changed the user experience a little bit and gave you a little bit more control in some ways, but I don't think it produced really much different results in the end. Now, your mileage may vary on that, but I may touch on that subject a little bit, but I wanted to cover that just in case. So what was a video that originally was going to be how to fix the camera has turned into, hey, this camera doesn't really need fixing, you just need to learn how to use it. And if you're interested in learning more about this camera, please let me know in the comments below and be specific about what you want to know, and I'll try to make a video about that in the future. For now, that's it. I'm done talking. I'm out of breath. I'm done trying to make this video. I just want to end it. So that's my thoughts on it now. Buy the phone. It's a good phone. It's the best. Okay, bye.